So today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to dissect a war that never actually happened, but it's a conflict that shows us exactly what a modern war would look like. This is Operation Epic Fury. Using this incredibly detailed scenario as our guide, let's dive right in. So, what does a modern war really look like? A conflict between major powers in the 21st century. If you're picturing something out of an old war movie, well, you might want to rethink that. The reality today is way more complex and interconnected than you might think. It's what we call a hybrid war, and you can think of it like this: a three-front battle, all happening at the exact same time. You've got the kinetic strikes, that's the missiles. You've got cyber attacks, that's the malware. And you've got economic warfare, the market shocks. The key thing to remember is that each one of these is designed to make the other two even more powerful.
All right, to really get a grip on how this all works, let's start where the action is most obvious, the physical, kinetic conflict that kicked everything off in Operation Epic Fury.
Okay, so it all kicks off on February 28th. And right out of the gate, the first strikes are what you'd call a decapitation effort, hitting both Iranian missile sites and its top leadership. The response, it was almost immediate. Just a few hours later, Iran strikes back, hitting a huge commercial port in Dubai and a U.S. base in Kuwait. And by that evening, a massive wave of missiles is already on its way to Israel. The speed of it all is just breathtaking.
And here's the thing, at the exact same time these military strikes are happening, a critical economic move is made. Iran blockades the Strait of Hormuz. Instantly, one of the most important arteries for the entire world's energy supply is threatened. This wasn't some accident or a side effect of the fighting, no. This was a core part of the game plan from minute one.
Okay, so we've seen the physical battlefield. Now let's pull back the curtain and look at the invisible one. Because while all those missiles were in the air, a second digital war was already raging.
And this is where we really see a major shift in modern conflict. As the intelligence firm Flashpoint put it, cyber operations weren't just some sideshow. They were a synchronized force multiplier, meaning they were deliberately timed and targeted to create the most chaos possible alongside the physical attacks.
So what does that actually look like? Well, it was a war on three digital fronts. First, you have psychological operations. Imagine getting a push notification from an app you trust, a popular prayer app, but it's been hijacked to send fake mobilization notices. That's turning a source of comfort into a weapon of confusion. Second, you have direct infrastructure attacks, hitting everything from defense contractors all the way down to municipal water systems. And third, corporate espionage, with sophisticated groups targeting the networks of U.S. aerospace and defense firms.
And pretty quickly, the battle lines started to blur. These attacks weren't just aimed at the military anymore. Suddenly, private companies, banks, payment systems, even a global medical technology company named Stryker, they all found themselves directly on the digital front lines, causing disruptions for people thousands of miles away from the fighting.
Now let's move to that third front. You've got missiles flying and cyber attacks spreading. What's the third layer? Well, this is where it hits the global economy, hard and fast.
All right, take a look at this. This chart is basically the market having a full-blown panic attack in real time. It's a classic risk-off move. Investors are dumping stocks and running for the perceived safety of the US dollar. But the real story is those two giant spikes on the right. Oil prices rocketed up over 36%, and the market's fear gauge, the VIX, exploded by nearly 30%. This is just pure, unadulterated uncertainty, visualized as a chart. And to put a hard number on that oil spike, the price of Brent crude oil hit a high of $119.50 a barrel. Just to give you some perspective, right before this kicked off, it was sitting at around $72. That is a massive jump. And a jump like that, well, it affects the price of pretty much everything everywhere.
And that price shock isn't just a number on a screen. It has real, tangible consequences for everyone. This analysis shows us what happens when oil gets into that severe escalation zone, which is exactly where the conflict pushed it. You're looking at shaving almost a full percentage point off global GDP, while at the same time adding over a point to inflation. It's a 1-2 punch to the global economy.
So we've got the kinetic, the cyber, and the economic fronts. Now, let's zoom in on the one place on the map where all three of these domains collide in a really dangerous way.
We're talking about the Strait of Hormuz. And the reason this little strip of water is so unbelievably critical is this number right here, 20%. 1/5 of the entire world's daily oil supply has to pass through this single choke point.
But here is the real kicker.
This is the part that connects everything we've been talking about. The Strait of Hormuz isn't just a highway for oil tankers, it's also one of the most jam-packed spots on the planet for the undersea fiber optic cables that carry, well, pretty much all of our data. The physical artery for energy and the digital artery for global finance and communication, they run through the exact same highly vulnerable corridor.
And that brings us to this critical realization. Messing with digital infrastructure isn't collateral damage anymore. It is a deliberate strategy. It's about turning the very systems we depend on for modern life into weapons of war.
You've got all these critical cable systems for banking, for military intelligence, for the internet itself, all squeezed together here in these shallow, contested waters. If you cut those cables, you're not just knocking a country offline, you're actually degrading the performance of the entire global network for everyone.
So when you piece it all together, the missiles, the malware, the market shocks, and these critical choke points, you start to see the new rules of war taking shape right before our eyes.
It really is a fundamental transformation. On one hand, you have conventional warfare. That was army versus army, with pretty clear battlefields. But this new hybrid warfare, it's completely different. It's society versus society. The battlefields are both physical and digital, and the targets aren't just tanks and planes anymore. There are infrastructure, our companies, and the global supply chains we all rely on.
Okay, so what does all of this actually mean for you? Why should you care? Well, because in this new reality, a conflict on the other side of the planet can cause immediate disruption right where you live. It means your packages get delayed, and gas prices spike. It means the cloud services you use every day for work and entertainment are now effectively sitting in potential war zones. It means direct hit to the global economy that affects your wallet. The big takeaway here is that all the systems we depend on, energy, data, finance, they are all tangled together and way more fragile than any of us thought.
And that leaves us with one final and pretty sobering question to think about. When the battlefield and the global supply chain are the exact same thing, just how secure is our interconnected world really?